As the rain cascaded down the towering windows of her new apartment, Sophie found herself enveloped in an unsettling sense of solitude. Her move to New York City had been met with excitement and anticipation, but the reality of her new basement apartment was casting a shadow over her enthusiasm. The dimly lit space seemed to amplify the eerie atmosphere that clung to the air like a thick fog. Nestled in the basement of a 15-story building, Sophie's apartment was a small enclave of shadows and secrets. The bare concrete walls exuded a chill that seemed to seep into her bones, and the sparse furnishings only served to emphasize the emptiness of the space. The flickering overhead light cast wavering shadows that danced ominously on the walls, and every creak and groan of the building's foundation sent shivers down Sophie's spine. It was on the third night in her new apartment that Sophie's unease was ignited into full-blown anxiety. As she lay in bed, the muffled sounds of footsteps echoed through the hallway just outside her door. She held her breath, straining her ears to listen, her heart pounding in her chest. The footsteps paused, and then, to her horror, a key clicked into her apartment's lock. Before Sophie could react, the door swung open slowly, revealing a figure framed in the hallway's dim light. A tall man stood in the doorway, his features shrouded by the shadows. His unkempt hair hung low over his forehead, and his clothing appeared tattered and stained. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity as they locked onto Sophie's. Frozen in a mixture of fear and shock, Sophie managed to stammer, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The man's lips curled into a chilling smile, revealing yellowed teeth. "I'm sorry. I must have gotten the wrong apartment," he said in a voice that dripped with false innocence. As he turned and retreated down the hallway, Sophie's voice caught in her throat. She wanted to call out, to demand an explanation, but the presence of the stranger had rendered her speechless. She lay in bed, her mind racing with questions, until exhaustion finally pulled her into an uneasy sleep. The following days were marked by a sense of constant unease. Sophie's eyes darted to the windows every time she heard a noise, and the flickering of the overhead light seemed to take on a malevolent quality. She questioned her decision to move into the basement apartment, regretting not paying more attention to the ominous feeling that had gripped her during her initial viewing. It was during a rain-soaked evening when Sophie's encounters with the mysterious man became more frequent. She was returning home from work, umbrella in hand, when she saw him standing in the hallway near her door. His eyes met hers once again, and a shiver ran down her spine as he whispered, "Enjoying your new home?" Sophie's heart raced as she fumbled for her keys, her fingers trembling as she struggled to insert the key into the lock. She could feel his gaze boring into her back as she entered her apartment, and she locked the door behind her with a sense of relief. But the man's presence lingered like a dark cloud, and Sophie's newfound sanctuary had been tainted by his intrusion. She began to notice subtle signs of his presence, a faint scent of mustiness. Objects moved ever so slightly, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Determined to regain a sense of control, Sophie decided to confront the man. Armed with her phone and a cautious resolve, she stepped into the hallway one evening, only to find it empty. She hesitated, her heart racing, before making her way to the stairwell. And there he was, standing on the staircase, his gaze fixed on her. "Why are you following me?" Sophie demanded, her voice quivering. The man's eerie smile remained, and he responded with a chilling calmness, "I'm not following you. I just happened to be here." The ambiguity of his response sent a chill down Sophie's spine, and she turned and fled back into her apartment, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She locked the door behind her, her mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. As days turned into weeks, Sophie's grip on reality began to fray. The presence of the man became a constant presence in her thoughts, and the boundaries between reality and paranoia blurred. She began to question her own perceptions, wondering if the man truly existed, or if he was a creation of her overactive imagination. One night, as rain pounded against the windows and shadows danced on the walls, Sophie heard a faint tapping at her window. She turned slowly, her heart pounding, to see the man's face pressed against the glass. His eyes bore into hers, and a sickening realization washed over her. He was real, and he was there, watching her. The man's smile twisted into something sinister, and he traced a finger along the glass, leaving streaks of condensation in his wake. Sophie's scream tore through the air as she stumbled back, her heart racing as she fumbled for her phone. She dialed 911, her voice trembling as she recounted the chilling events that had unfolded in her basement apartment. The police arrived quickly, searching the building and the surrounding area, but the man was nowhere to be found. Their assurances did little to calm Sophie's shaken nerves, and the creeping feeling of dread remained. Weeks turned into months, and the memory of the man's face pressed against her window haunted Sophie's every waking moment. The apartment that had once held the promise of a fresh start had become a prison of fear. Sophie's friends and family urged her to move, to escape the suffocating grip of her unsettling environment. But the memory of the man's smile followed her, a constant reminder that he was out there, watching, waiting. And so, the basement apartment became a silent witness to Sophie's descent into a world of fear and paranoia. The shadows that danced on the walls held secrets she could not unravel, and the rain that tapped against the windows seemed to whisper unsettling truths. As she closed her eyes each night, Sophie couldn't escape the feeling that she was not alone, that the man's presence lingered in the darkness, a haunting reminder that some fears are all too real. Months passed, and Sophie's once vibrant spirit had been replaced by a constant state of dread. The apartment's dimly lit corners seemed to hold secrets that whispered to her in the night. Every creak of the building's foundation, every flicker of the overhead light, served as a chilling reminder of the man who had invaded her space. Desperate for a way out, Sophie's resolve began to waver. She debated whether to confide in someone, to share her chilling experiences with a friend or a family member. But the fear of not being believed, of being dismissed as paranoid, kept her isolated within the suffocating confines of her basement apartment. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows and shadows danced ominously, Sophie's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Her heart raced as she opened the message, her blood turning to ice as she read the words, "I'm closer than you think." The message sent shivers down Sophie's spine. She felt a surge of panic and scrambled to lock her doors and windows, her hands trembling as she dialed 911. She described the text message and the months of unnerving encounters, her voice quivering with a mixture of fear and desperation. The police arrived swiftly, their presence bringing a temporary sense of relief. They assured Sophie that they would investigate the situation thoroughly, and they urged her to stay vigilant and report any suspicious activity. The officers searched the vicinity again, but just like before, no trace of the man could be found. The following days were marked by a heightened state of anxiety. Sophie couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of the walls closing in around her. She kept her phone close, every notification sending her heart racing. Sleep became an elusive luxury, with nightmares and visions of the man's sinister smile haunting her nights. One evening, as Sophie was locking her apartment door, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was him, the man who had tormented her for months. His smile was more sinister than ever, his eyes gleaming with a malevolent intensity. "You can't escape me," he whispered, his voice a chilling echo in the dimly lit hallway. Sophie's heart raced, her fight-or-flight instincts kicking in. She slammed her door shut, her hands trembling as she called the police once again. The man's chilling words reverberated in her mind as she huddled in her apartment, waiting for the police to arrive. When the officers came, they conducted a thorough search of the building, but the man was nowhere to be found. They suggested that Sophie consider staying with friends or family temporarily, and offered her resources for counseling and support. But even as they left, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that the man's presence still lingered. Determined to take control of her life, Sophie reached out to her friends and family, sharing her harrowing experiences and seeking refuge in their support. With their encouragement, she decided to leave the basement apartment and find a new place to call home, far away from the haunting memories that had taken root within its walls. As Sophie moved into her new apartment, a sense of relief washed over her. The unfamiliar surroundings held the promise of a fresh start, a chance to rebuild her sense of security and regain her peace of mind. She surrounded herself with loved ones and sought therapy to heal from the trauma of her experiences. Months turned into years, and Sophie's life slowly began to regain a semblance of normalcy. The memory of the man's chilling smile still haunted her, but she was determined not to let fear control her life. She became an advocate for personal safety, sharing her story to empower others to trust their instincts and seek help when faced with unsettling situations. The basement apartment, once a prison of fear, was left behind, a distant memory of a dark chapter in Sophie's life. The shadows that had danced on its walls were replaced by the warmth of new beginnings, reminding Sophie that even in the face of the most chilling experiences, there was always the possibility of light and hope. Years passed, and Sophie's resilience had transformed her into a beacon of strength. Her advocacy for personal safety and her willingness to share her chilling experiences had touched the lives of many. She had become a pillar of support for others who had faced their own unsettling encounters, offering a listening ear and guidance to those who needed it most. Sophie's new apartment, bathed in sunlight and filled with comforting furnishings, was a stark contrast to the basement dwelling that had once held her captive in fear. The haunting memories of the man's presence had gradually faded, replaced by a newfound sense of empowerment and control over her life. Her journey had taught her that fear could be conquered, that the darkness could be pushed back by the light of resilience and support. The nightmares that had once plagued her nights had been replaced by dreams of strength and hope, reminding her of the progress she had made. One day, Sophie received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was an invitation to speak at a personal safety seminar in a neighboring city. As she read the letter, a mixture of emotions washed over her, a combination of pride, apprehension, and determination. Despite the lingering traces of anxiety, Sophie knew that this was an opportunity to make a difference on a larger scale. The seminar was held in a bright, spacious auditorium filled with eager faces. Sophie took the stage, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshakable. She shared her story, the chilling encounters, the suffocating fear, and the journey toward reclaiming her sense of safety and agency. The audience listened intently, captivated by Sophie's narrative of triumph over adversity. Her words resonated deeply, touching a chord with those who had faced their own challenges. During the Q&A session, individuals shared their own stories of fear and survival, and Sophie offered words of encouragement and advice. As the seminar came to an end, Sophie was approached by a young woman who had tears in her eyes. The woman shared her own experience of encountering a suspicious person, and how Sophie's story had given her the strength to report the incident and seek help. Sophie felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her journey had come full circle, empowering others to find their own voices and take control of their safety. In the years that followed, Sophie continued to advocate for personal safety. She collaborated with local organizations, schools, and community centers to provide workshops and resources for individuals of all ages. Her story became a source of inspiration, reminding others that they were not alone in their fears, and that seeking support was a sign of strength, not weakness. Sophie's advocacy work also led her to establish a foundation dedicated to personal safety awareness and survivor support. The foundation provided resources, counseling, and educational programs to empower individuals to navigate the world confidently and safely. And so, Sophie's journey from the chilling encounters in her basement apartment to the empowerment that came from sharing her story had created a ripple effect of positive change. Her resilience and determination had transformed fear into strength, turning a chapter of darkness into one of empowerment and hope. As she looked back on her path, she knew that even in the face of the most unsettling experiences, there was always the potential for growth, healing, and making a lasting impact on the lives of others. The legacy of Sophie's journey continued to ripple outwards, impacting lives far beyond her own. Her foundation grew stronger, reaching more individuals with its resources, workshops, and support programs. Through partnerships with local law enforcement, schools, and community organizations, the foundation became a trusted source of guidance for personal safety and survivor empowerment. Sophie's story became known on a wider scale, capturing the attention of media outlets, magazines, and even documentary filmmakers. She agreed to share her experiences in a documentary that aimed to shed light on the importance of personal safety awareness and the strength that could be found in facing one's fears head-on. The documentary, titled Decos of Empowerment, touched hearts around the world. It wasn't just Sophie's story that resonated, but the stories of the individuals she had inspired and supported. Survivors who had found the courage to speak up and seek help shared their own experiences, emphasizing the message that no one should ever have to face their fears alone. Sophie's voice became a beacon of hope for those who felt trapped by fear, inspiring them to take action and seek the help they deserved. She received messages from people of all walks of life, expressing gratitude for her advocacy and sharing their own journeys of triumph over adversity. The impact of her work reached individuals who were once silent, giving them the strength to find their voices. Years later, Sophie stood in front of a crowd at a personal safety convention. The once quiet woman who had felt trapped by her own fears had become a renowned advocate and speaker. She shared her journey, from the eerie encounters in her basement apartment to the empowerment that had blossomed from sharing her story. But Sophie's journey hadn't just touched the lives of strangers, it had also transformed her own life. She had reclaimed her sense of security, found her purpose, and built meaningful connections with people who had become her extended family. The fear that had once paralyzed her had been replaced by a fierce determination to make the world safer, one person at a time. As Sophie concluded her speech, the crowd erupted in applause. She looked out at the sea of faces, each one representing someone who had been touched by her journey. And in that moment, she knew that the shadows that had once haunted her basement apartment were now shadows of the past. The legacy of Sophie's story lived on, not just in the lives she had directly impacted, but in the broader narrative of resilience, empowerment, and the capacity of individuals to overcome the darkest of experiences. Her journey had proven that even in the face of the most chilling and unsettling encounters, there was always the potential for transformation, growth, and the creation of a better, safer world for everyone. As I stepped through the automatic doors of Walmart, a shiver ran down my spine. The store, usually bustling with activity, was unusually quiet. The only sound came from the humming of fluorescent lights overhead. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I ventured deeper into the store, my eyes scanning the aisles. That's when I noticed him, a man lurking in the shadows, watching me intently. His appearance was unsettling, with unkempt hair and hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through me. He wore a tattered trench coat that barely concealed his wiry frame. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I continued my shopping. As I made my way through the store, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I turned, I caught a glimpse of the man, lurking just out of sight. His presence sent chills down my spine, and I quickened my pace, hoping to lose him in the labyrinth of aisles. But no matter where I went, he was always there, his eyes locked on me. I tried to shake off the paranoia, convincing myself that it was all in my head. Yet, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and an ominous feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. As I approached the checkout, I noticed the man standing just a few feet away. His gaze never wavered, and a sinister smile slowly spread across his face. I could feel his eyes burning into me, his presence suffocating. I fumbled with my items, my heart pounding in my chest. With my purchases hastily bagged, I made a beeline for the exit. But as I neared the doors, I saw the man blocking my path. Panic surged through me as I searched for an alternative escape route, but he seemed to anticipate my every move. My mind raced, my heart pounding louder with each passing second. Summoning all my courage, I approached an employee and explained the situation. The employee's eyes widened with concern, and they quickly phoned security. As I glanced back, the man had disappeared into thin air. I shivered, unsure if he had ever been real or merely a figment of my imagination. Security arrived promptly, combing the store in search of the mysterious man, but he seemed to have vanished without a trace. They reassured me that they would monitor the situation closely, and I left the store, my nerves still on edge. Days turned into weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden menace, every stranger on the street a potential threat. Sleep eluded me as I replayed the encounter in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. Months passed, and life returned to normal. The memory of that eerie encounter faded into the recesses of my mind until one fateful day. As I flipped through the local newspaper, a headline caught my eye: a serial predator apprehended. The accompanying photograph sent chills down my spine. It was the man from Walmart. The article detailed the man's twisted crimes, his predatory behavior, and the terror he had inflicted on countless others. I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and horror, knowing that I had narrowly escaped becoming another victim. To this day, I can't step foot in a Walmart without remembering that chilling encounter. It serves as a constant reminder to trust my instincts and stay vigilant. The world can be a sinister place, and sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones hiding in plain sight.